This project would not have been possible unless the Michigan Burning Man community came together in the way it did in the last year, 2 years, 3 years. And that's largely because of the efforts of a lot of people in the Uber Carney group, because of JoJo, because of Kurt and Becca, because of Lars, because of, and especially...
Oh, you're going to demonstrate for the camera.
And this is the MVP. This guy is a camp bitch. He ran the kitchens like a pro. Well, it happened last year at the Burning Man, where we were just hit by one of the worst, actually the worst windstorm that I've been in. 70-mile-per-hour winds took out our entire camp. We saw outwork being blown across the playa, and the only people in camp that set things back up were me and Chris Conklin. So after we were done, things were still getting blown around. Our camp was nice and secure, and we started talking about the most absurd projects we could possibly build in conditions like this. And one of the things that popped into our head were windmills, because we didn't think there was any possible way to make a windmill that would be safe and functional out in the playa. Within our minds still continued to turn to destruction. We had to burn, if we were to build it, we had to burn it down or break it or knock it apart somehow. So we're talking about ballistas, we're talking about catapults, and then we realized that we'd never seen anybody charge anything with a flaming lance. So we thought lance, windmills, made sense for Don Quixote, because everything out on the playa is pretty quixotic. It's a bunch of people doing crazy stuff with good intent, but most people would think it's crazy. When we first came up with the idea, it was a complete joke. I don't think either of us expected to actually get off the playa and then still want to do it, but I couldn't get it out of my head. So I started to talk to people about it, and when I mentioned the idea, people's eyes kind of lighted up, and the more we talked about it, the more people got interested, and that got me motivated enough to look into, if we're going to do it, how would we pay for it? And I realized that Burning Man gave grants to artists. They gave us $5,000, and that was all we needed to get started. If we had actually bought everything, we would have been $3,000 over budget. But because we spent a lot of time ripping apart pallets, using recycled wood, getting things donated, we were about $1,000 over budget total. And that was primarily covered by just a small camp fee that everybody paid, $40. Okay, the windmills were built at Ben Flaster's yard. One of the first people to get involved in the project was Ben Flaster, which makes a lot of sense because Ben absolutely adores Don Quixote. He has pictures up in his wall. A good friend of his has a table made on tiles of Don Quixote. Ben idolizes Don Quixote, so he loved the project from the beginning. He, as soon as he heard that I was writing a grant, he rushed out and built a prototype mill that he could burn on New Year's. From there, we wanted to make sure we planned everything out, and he offered up his yard. And so from, I'd say, 6 months, we started building the prototypes at his place, and we ended up building full-size mills there as well. Yeah, so each of these gentlemen built, Dan built his own prototype, Jeremy built a prototype. The idea was, none of us had ever built a windmill before. We all had different ideas.
Yourself, man.
built plenty of windmills.
Okay, Dutch style. Let me specify. We haven't built Dutch style windmills.
Right.
Okay.
On the pinwheels, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. So we have an octagonal base, which is a lot different than building your standard square structure. I think most people have been involved in building something that was meant to stand up as a square. The octagon led to some design challenges. The fact that we wanted these things to be 20 feet tall, hundreds of pounds, and then have a turret that rotated, but still have this whole structure be able to withstand 70-mile-per-hour winds, posed a lot of challenges. So by doing 3 prototypes, what this did was let us actually see how design elements would work in the real world, not just how we thought they would work. And it also let us see how the structures would collapse when burnt. We did 3 prototypes of the windmills half size, 10 foot tall. We did this for a lot of reasons, but the main thing was we really want to protect the desert surface from being scarred. The Burning Man's very adamant about making sure that the desert surface is protected. So we invested a lot in the engineering of the windmills so that they would collapse down on themselves as they burned. But at the same time, we had to design these so that they could withstand 70-mile-per-hour winds. And if these were all Dutch style, all their walls are completely enclosed and they're perfect for catching the wind. So we put a lot of engineering into these puppies. People, I imagine, today are going to be showing up around 1 or 2 of this.
And so the planning and constructing of the prototypes begins. Over several months, a core group of people worked diligently on the project. Many more lent a hand when they could.
I forgot to bring.
The angles are non-compound.
Yeah.
And the bottom is upright, not like this. The bottom sits like that. Because then all the angles are non-compound. And the same thing repeats on top.
Yeah.
There it is. We're going to burn that on the playa.
Logistics. Seeing who knows how to do what. I had this. I saw this occasion the sails flying off and like shredding people's camps all around. We're going to charge the windmills. We're starting to figure out the dramatics of that, but I'm just sitting down, like I said, with Tim TV and we're doing some choreography. And hey, we got a camera. If we have to, we can rewind.
Okay.
There's no rewinding.
Oh man. Yeah. Going, guys.
The other one is now firewood.
Yeah, that's firewood.
I bring hands to the project.
What the hell?
The shaft for the side.
Right through here, just go pull big enough.
Right here.
Stick it like this. That's mine. This is burlap.
Do it again.
Circumference at the bottom.
We have time.
70 miles an hour ain't no joke.
Yeah.
Put the sails on. You can't?
I got my mason.
As summer drew near, decisions were made to test burn a prototype, plan fundraising events, and build the full-size windmills.
But if that could be good, because we wanted to shoot up into the top as quickly as possible. So you twist it.
When you mix it with gunpowder, it does.
Oh, okay.
Except for the turret. I mean, the turret really won't come apart much. You can take the blade off.
Big purposes or for
We're looking at four
physics
things.
purposes?
We're looking at, stability.
I don't know. I'd rather have it in
A bigger truck.
in a bigger truck. Yeah.
I got one thing to say. Everybody never agrees.
You're gonna have cross braces inside when you get the real one?
Like when we
Yeah.
rip it,
Yeah. And then the thing is, we'll have to, once we do this, we'll have to refine everything and get it written down so there's no guesswork when we're building the full-size ones. This one's facing off against Jeremy's design.
Okay.
The community gathered together at the bunker to quickly reassemble Dan Eklund's prototype for a test burn later that night. No Michigan burner gathering is complete without old friends, new acquaintances, and good food.
Got a wiener and a pickle. Wiener and a pickle.
What we're doing is that we're trying different ignition sources. This is the first one we're going to try. And we've taken small rocket motors from model rockets, drilled them into a 2x4, and what we're hoping to do is potentially use this as an ignition source for the bag of gasoline on the top of the turret. But we haven't really seen how they react when they're bedded down like this, and we're also not sure how high the fire gets, so we're trying to figure out which is going to work best, what side. The bad part about this is that rocket motors being solid fuel. Yeah, we're going to burn it up right now. least try the first one anyway and see how it works. Contacts are on, that's why. Do it.
That's perfect.
That was success?
That was a success. And we have t-shirts and stickers for sale up front.
Darkness falls upon the bunker, and with the crowd well fed, it's time to test burn the first windmill prototype.
I think it burned.
Beautiful! That cannot have gone out better. That is beautiful.
We love you, Eric, but stay out of the pictures.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Still up.
That's a beautiful thing.
Larry.
Who will lick it and see if it's gold? Might be the bravest tongue in the village.
We're skating to
Oh, bullshit, man.
Art's going to hell when he dies, and he's going to love it.
After a successful test of the ignition sources and inferno, out came the fire performance gear for everyone's entertainment and amusement. And of course, the best way to raise funds is to throw another party.
And then we ran Quixotica because there's been a lot of talk about doing a big Michigan regional event. And though there's been a lot of talk about it, it's just never come about. So I figured this would be a great opportunity to do something to raise money for the windmills. And it ended up taking a tremendous amount of time. I was astounded at how much was involved. I thought we were going to have a party, kind of like art, having a party now. We got insurance. We started talking to city officials, had to deal with bureaucracies. We had to bring in DJs. We got to pay the DJs. It was an astounding amount of work.
With word of the event publicized in the local media, hundreds of burners and non-burners alike drew together for a day of entertainment that went well into the night.
but this would hopefully be something that we do as an annual event to promote Burning Man in Michigan. Because it's not regional this year, but it could become a regional. But even so, I think it's right because there hasn't been a big Burning Man piece in Metro Times, and they love that stuff. If you say, talk about art, you talk about the Burning Man Festival, you talk about this windmill project, the 400th year anniversary of Don Quixote, the Metro Times will eat that sort of thing up. Plus, if you have Chaos Productions performing there, you have DJs there, I think we can get in there.
As long as you put the notices out there and stuff, Jackrabbit will put that online for you.
Alright, ladies and germs, your host, Tim TV, wishes to present the Warren Ukyo Dojo demo team, so come on down here right now.
Hi kids, I'm Tim TV. Everybody say, hi Tim! Welcome to my house, welcome to my yard. You guys ready to see some girls take their clothes off? ChaosProductions.com proudly presents the Burlesque Dancer.
Fire Fabulous! Welcome to all! Thank you for coming! If it wasn't for you, there would be no party!
And we ended up actually making some money. And I was very happily surprised by that after everything was done, because it wasn't looking like that in the middle of the project. This guy was taking naps inside. Yeah, poster. And we'll also have it cross-faced to supports from last year's center camp.
Sick playa. There's the man.
It's 3 inches below the nipple.
So people know this is serious.
Something in the face. It's not even on.
It is.
Black Rock City or bust. Black Rock City or bust.
The hardest thing we ran into was Monday. We had like a 6-hour dust storm, 50-mile-per-hour winds. We were really hoping to get the cranes out, and that backed everything up until late into the next day, where all the project needed heavy equipment, forklifts, cranes, and nobody was getting up. So we were ready to go on Monday, and we could have had the turrets finished on Monday, or at least up on Monday, but we were building late into the day. One thing that we have to be really careful about is making sure we protect the desert surface out in the playa. For all the work we put into that, they collapsed beautifully.
Right
exactly right on top of the burn platform that then caught on fire and left 3 burn scars anyway. When I came into the artery, which is the center of the people who work with the artists, they come up to me and they go, "Eric, you are the rock and roll star of grant proposal artists. We love the way you described your burn platform. It was astounding." And then, of course, the burn platform wasn't in flame. They were actually very cool about it because their whole thing was, we used a design that they had referenced off their website as an ideal burn platform. I built it exactly to specs, but then I look over at Jeremy and I look back at the windmills, and I look at the burn platforms that are supposed to protect the desert floor that all this stuff's supposed to fall on. I'm like, Jeremy, are burn platforms burning? Sure enough, the amount of gasoline that we used combined with the wind was blowing the fire out and underneath the metal sheets of our burn platforms and was lighting them all on fire from underneath. So all this time and effort we went into protecting the playa. Everything else in our whole project went perfect, but our burn platforms burnt out from underneath the structures and scarred the desert floor. As a matter of fact, if you look at a couple of the satellite photos from space, you can see our burn scars from space.
I really think it was all the dripping combustibles.
The gasoline, the gallons of gasoline pouring onto the burn
and the lamp oil.
That might have something to do with it as well. Funny thing was, the temple that they had that year had the exact same burn platform design as our windmills. So as soon as Lady B saw that our burn platforms were burning, they realized that their temple was going to do the exact same thing, and that thing was huge in relation to our project. And it was a pretty exciting experience to climb up into the creation that we'd all built and really hope that while we're out there without the cross supports that we wouldn't get blown over by the 50-mile-per-hour winds while we're securing these things down with our heads sticking out the top. It was pretty interesting.
Together the final blade on the final mill, and we're having trouble because the wind's coming up, and then we see an art car, and it's the Red Ryder art car, and I'm like, flag that car down, bring it over here, and got him over there and got up on top of it. It was much easier to put the blade on. Wish we had them.
Yeah. And then when they left, they played our theme song.
One important part about artwork at Burning Man is that it needs to be interactive. So when we built these windmills, we wanted people to be able to go inside of them and somehow work with the interior of the structure.
since the windmills represented the giants that Don Quixote saw, the monsters that he made up in his own mind, we wanted a space where we could take pieces of scrap wood and people could leave their monsters inside of the mills to have us fight or for them just to get rid of. So we ended up probably with, per each mill, somewhere between 150 to 200 of these plaques hanging from these twined strings all inside the windmills, just kind of swaying in the wind of people's monsters. And people have some pretty amazing stuff, some very personal stuff. In some cases it was just drawings, pieces of poetry or someone's name. In other cases they wrote almost volumes about people who've scarred them, who've hurt their life, who've damaged them. In other cases it's fears that they couldn't get over that stop them from doing something they love or stop them from living. In other cases, people talked about the monsters that they had already taken care of themselves, that they'd already gotten rid of. It's kind of like a tribute to conquering the demons. So it was very personal, and a lot of those were very touching. And of course, all of those went up with the windmills when we torched them. Okay, well the concept is, with the three windmills, the windmills were, of course in Don Quixote, representing the giants that Don Quixote saw. So what we wanted to do is, since the windmills were going to stay windmills during our performance, we had to embody the monsters some other way. So the idea was we'd have these creatures emerging from the windmills, and we definitely wanted fire performance. We also had a problem where we had maybe 16 trained fire performers, and we had another dozen people who would have no training at all. So we thought it'd be perfect if the monsters were using torches, because the trained fire performers are very rhythmic. They're going to be having the weapons flowing around their body. It should look very smooth and ordered. So we had the monsters just going out there back and forth, and looking very chaotic with the fire. So what happens is these monsters emerge from the windmills, and they would go out and menace the crowd, and they go out in waves, and some of them would come back as their torches burn out, and come back out again. Around the second time they came out, the warriors would come out from the crowd, spinning staff, spinning poi, breathing fire, working with other fire implements, and they would combat the monsters, going back and forth, and they stayed in a stalemate until the very end, where the knights arose with the 9-foot lances, and these knights, when those lances lit up, it was just such an intense fire that it drove the monsters away. At that point, the knights charged the windmills one by one. We wanted to make sure that the windmills were dramatic when they went up, so we made sure we used lots of gasoline. Basically what happens is the burn system was, you have these big Dutch-style windmills, and you have a turret on top, and we had to be able to hit the base of the windmill, but really set the top on fire.
We had a bag of white gas on the bottom of the windmills, and then we had a 2.5 gallon container of a combination of gasoline and white gas up in the top. We then covered that with burlap, cardboard, wood, and we covered the entire thing with lamp oil, and we covered the wick with lamp oil as well. So what happens was, the idea was you hit the bottom bag, which would then catch on fire. In truth, it kind of exploded. So when we came by, each of us would go off with these 9-foot lances. We made them 9 feet because we realized there would be an explosion. Thought that would be enough. When we come in and we hit it, the first time you see Chris hit it, who's the guy who took out the first windmill, if you watch the photos, you see him charging in all confident, and you see this picture of him hightailing it away from the first mill. He had actually burnt himself, because when you hit this thing, it blew up dramatically, and it was just enough fire where it would shoot out right up to your body, and his arm was too far along the staff. When I came around and hit, I'm the one who took out the second windmill, I hit that, and the thing blew so hot that I immediately backpedaled, and I twisted my ankle trying to get back so fast. I didn't get burnt, and I had to run back around and launch my lance into the front door of the windmill so I could get rid of that. And I think that Tim had caught on, or maybe was just smarter than us to begin with, and I think he kind of hurled his lance at the flaming bag, hit it, and then the whole thing went up. So yeah, dramatic is good, and it was just dramatic enough so we barely got injured, and I think that's the perfect amount. And what was interesting is, as they burnt, they all tilted, the turrets all tilted, dropped, and lowered perfectly. They all coincided. They all fell and tilted the exact same way. It was very interesting. So that meant that once these puppies started burning, they kept burning, and they kept burning, and they kept burning, and they didn't fall for about 20-25 minutes.
bit of burn on the playa, but wow, there's a lot of burn on the playa back there. Hi, Mr. Fireman. Thank you.
Time to place your bet. Is it door number 1, door number 2, or door number 3? How many people are betting on number 1? Number 2? Number 3? Detroit Burners rock! Thank you!
gotta have that gangster lean, you know?
From Detroit.
I'm gonna get in a little closer. Number 2.
It warms the cockles of the heart, doesn't it? To see so many happy, crazy, goofy kids gathered around a little campfire in the backyard. This is our living room after all, and this is our family. So, welcome to our home. Have fun.
Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
No, but seriously, if the Michigan Burning Man community did not come together the way it did, there would not have been the pool of people who gave time and effort and resources and creativity and energy to Quixotica, to the windmills, to support on a billion different things, to throwing ideas off of. It's because of the strength of the community in Michigan right now that a project like this was possible. The only reason why I ever thought that taking 3 20-foot tall windmills out to Burning Man and being able to set them up for Michigan is because I saw the people with Uber Carney, like Dan, like Art, like Len, all the people involved in Uber Carney, taking a 3-story tall roller coaster out of steel and taking it out there year after year and putting that thing together and taking it down in a couple of days. And that was just astounding to me. If I didn't have that sort of example, I might have come up with the idea, but I would not have thought that sort of thing would have been possible.
We done good, didn't we?
I think it was pretty goddamn good. I'm not joking. I learned a lot. Learned a lot about other people and how to work with other people and how much time and effort it takes from lots of little actions from individuals who are willing to put in a couple hours here and a couple hours there. So it wouldn't have gotten it done without all of this very little time commitments by a few people when they could make it happen. And although I felt like I put in a lot of time, and I know that this is the case for everybody here.
Well, I had a lot of personal things come into it that I learned about getting through it. But yeah, working with people was the most important thing.
It still couldn't have gotten done without somebody to walk around and hand screws out, or make you laugh and bring over some refreshments.
Knowing that I could not be there some days was important to me personally.
Between the t-shirts and Quixotica and organizing this and writing the grant and working with people at the Burning Man organization and working with everybody who was involved and getting everybody's talents and seeing how the Michigan Burning Man community came together, I mean, there's just so much I can talk on. First year at Burning Man, I came out, I had my mind blown, but one of the questions I had left unanswered was, why the hell do people put 9 months, a year, 6 months of their time into art that they're going to show for a week at Burning Man and then burn down? Why the hell would anybody do that?
A day in our case.
Or a day in our case. And they don't get paid. Matter of fact, many times they lose thousands of dollars. What the hell motivates them? So the next year I went and I sat there and I thought about it, and once I understood why people spend all that time, I had to do it. Once I had an idea, I realized I wanted to give people the sort of experience that I had my first year out. I knew it won't affect everybody the way I want this piece to, but I know there'll be a few people out there where this piece to them will be just like it was for me my first year. And it will change their life in some way. That's what I'm hoping. And if it does that, even the chance that could happen is why that I feel that I want to continue to do big art, transformative art that is going to be in its context where it can affect people. And I think that's what Burning Man gives, is a context that allows art to affect people. But what I really learned, which is probably the heart of it, is that I can't stop doing this now.
Well, kids, thank you for coming to our party.
Thank you, Detroit Burners!
How many fucking times I have to say, don't take this so seriously?
Take what so seriously?